es catedrático de física de la Universidad de Uppsala en Suecia y es el responsable del Grupo de Estudios sobre el agotamiento de los hidrocarburos, Global Energy Systems, de dicha universidad. Su interés por el suministro mundial de energía data ya 20 años, cuando ya actuó como consejero del viceprimer ministro sueco. En 2002 ya enfocó sus investigaciones desde la física nuclear al agotamiento de petróleo, gas y carbón, así como las consecuencias. Ya ese mismo año, de hecho, lo que es la divulgación del Pico del Petróleo es una fecha importante, organizó el primer Congreso Internacional en Uppsala sobre el agotamiento del petróleo. ¿Se me escucha bien? Sí. Y en conexión con este nació la Asociación Internacional para el Estudio del Pico del Petróleo y Gas, la asociación probablemente más importante o que más trabajo ha hecho en la divulgación de este tema, ASPO, de la que es presidente desde 2003. Destacar también que en 2007 escribió un informe para la OCDE titulado Peak Oil and the Evolving Strategies of Oil Importing and Exporting Countries, Facing the Hard Truth About an Importer Decline for the OECD Countries. Y en 2009 testificó sobre el pico de petróleo ante el Senado australiano. Él da frecuentemente, de hecho, you have participated, of course, in all the ASPO meetings. Yeah, from the very beginning, yeah. Es una figura muy reconocida en este campo desde hace ya bastante tiempo. Y es también finalmente el autor del libro Picking at Peak Oil, was published last year, I think, 2012, hace 2 años. And now that's all for me. Thank you again, Kjell, and you can start when you want.
Well, thank you for the invitation, and I regret that I didn't choose Spanish as one of the foreign languages that we take in Sweden. But I'd like to start with to talk about the term peak oil. Many of you might not know why we're saying peak oil, and that goes back to a telephone call that I had with Colin Campbell in December year 2000. Colin was telling me that he planned to start an organization that should look at the decline of oil, and he said, I think I will call the organization the Association for the Study of the Oil Peak, because at that time they talked about the oil peak and the Hubbard peak. And if you take the short term of that, you get ASPO. And I told Colin, we cannot call an organization ASPO. I mean, that sounds not right in the mouth. And then Colin was thinking, and said, well, but if we change the order, and instead of saying the oil peak, we say peak oil, we get ASPO. Yeah, that sounds right, I said. So in December year 2000, the term peak oil was framed, and no one has used it before. And if they talk about something else, they don't know what they're talking about. Anyway, the thing I'm going to talk about today is the fracking boom and look into what that means for Europe. But before that, I'd like to explain for you how you should pronounce my name. Some problems. It's the Norwegian names. And it's spelled Kjell. Many of you know exactly how you should pronounce this oil company, Shell. So I'm Shell, you know. Sometimes it's good to be Shell, sometimes it's not good to be Shell. But the oil company Shell will probably be depleted at some point. Age is coming, and I guess that is also a symbol. But still, I'm going strong, and I like to work with it. This morning, it was said that it's very important that you understand exponential growth. And this is a couple of slides I used to show my students, and I thought I should show them for you too. If we take a water drop, you can know exactly that it's 1 to 10 to the minus 8 cubic meters, so that is 1 liter of water contains exactly 100,000 drops of water. And that can be nice to know. I mean, this is scientifically found and so on, so I not just take the number. So the question is, if you look at the experimental growth, this is a sport arena we have in Sweden, in Stockholm. It's called the Globe, and you can calculate exactly the volume of this globe. And if you now say that you have a leak from the top of the globe, and the first minute is 1 drop, the second minute is 2 drops, the third minute is 4 drops, I mean, that is exponential growth. So, and of course, I found a bucket very soon, and I put it there to collect all the water. And it happens to be 11 liters. So how long time will it take before the bucket is full? And the second question is, when do you need to flee the seats? Because, I mean, you see the row there, I mean, up to that level, And if you're sitting above there, when do you really need to leave the building to not drown in the water? And when it's completely full. And I can tell you that no one of my students managed to calculate this, so I don't ask you for your answer, so I'll tell it to you directly. And it takes 41 minutes to fill the bucket. It takes 55 minutes to get to this level, and it takes 57 minutes to get the whole globe full. This is exponential growth. And if you plot exponential growth in a linear scale, you get this curve here. And what is this curve? Do you remember this curve for some other things that was discussed very much some years back? It was called the hockey stick. The hockey stick. The hockey stick is nothing else than an exponential growth of something. So that means when you see something plotted as a hockey stick, you know problems is ahead. Because there is a limit for how long time you can go with the hockey stick. So the hockey stick is nothing else than exponential growth. Okay, that was the first lesson. So now let's see what we have when it comes to gas in Europe, natural gas. And we see here that we don't have so much ourselves, but in our neighborhood we have a lot of natural gas. We have from Russia, and we also have from the Middle East, if it should be that we really need it. So if we look at the existing production in Russia, I call this the heart of Europe, because the gas pipelines normally is red, and you see here all the pipelines with gas leaving this region in the northern western Siberia. There are the huge gas field, one of the biggest in the world. But the problem is, you see, that these fields are declining now. The production is declining, and we know very much what will happen in the future. So Russia must do something. They must make a bypass operation. It's at the heart. And so this is Europe's bypass operation. And you see, this is from where it will come, the Yamal Peninsula here. And if this bypass operation is not made now, this will be a big problem for Europe, much bigger than people realize. So if you look at the future production of natural gas in Russia, this is a thesis from one of my students, Bengt Söderberg. You see the future. You see that the production they have now is peaking. With the fields that is in production now and so on, the Russian natural gas is peaking, and it will decline very fast now. The red part here, that is the Yamal Peninsula. That is the bypass operation that is needed to be done. But politicians in Europe don't like to make long-term agreement with Russia, because Russia needs that to be able to get the money to make this peninsula to produce gas. So they postponed it. And instead now they're looking into collaboration with China. So this gas that was planned for Europe might end up in China instead, if we don't play our cards right. And you see also the consumption of natural gas in Russia, that in 2025 and so on, they will just produce for themselves. So that means that there will be a shortage of natural gas for Europe whatsoever, with crisis in Ukraine. And if you look at the consumption of natural gas in Europe, you see that in the 1970, it was a very small part that we imported. We had a lot of production. We had the Groningen gas field, and then we got the North Sea and so on. So the production of natural gas increased in Europe till around 2004, and when it started to decline. And you see the import is still increasing, even if we're using a little bit less gas now than we did at the maximum around 2005, 2010. So we have a problem in Europe. So from where should we get our gas in the future? We also know that conventional gas has peaked when it comes to discovery. So this means we are looking into unconventional gas, into fracking. Fracking boom. Yeah, this is the fracking boom everyone is talking about. And if you look at the oil production in the US, you see that from 2010, it is an enormous increase in oil production. And the same comes when it comes to natural gas. So, of course, if you see these graphs you think it's great, because it looks like it's a big potential for getting more gas and oil out from the ground. I don't talk about environmental things now, just support of gas and oil. We can do that in other perspective. So this is how it looks like when they're fracking a well. So they have all these trucks, and they couple them in series to get the pressure to 10,000 to 15,000 psi to get the fracking the shell. So this is one fracking team. This is one fracking team. So before this fracking team, we have had a drilling team. And all of these teams must be there in hundreds and maybe thousands to get this operation to run in the United States. We also must understand what is shale oil. Where do we get the shale oil and shale gas? This is what I call the oil factory in the ground. Down here we have sediments. It's called source rock. This is the Caroline shale, for instance. And if this is buried down, so we have a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius, we get that the long molecules are deposited into oil, and if it's getting even warmer, 150 degrees, this is turned into natural gas. And then we have these are leaking out, and we collect them in some kind of oil field up there, and we also normally have a water basin. So this is traditional, conventional oil and gas, and that is what we've been using so far. But you can understand that all of these sediments down here, they are cooked, and they have the oil and gas in them. But the porosity makes it stay there. So when you have fracking, you go down into the sediment and you crack them to get it out, the things that didn't come out natural. So that is why we have fracking as an option just now. This is the places in U.S., the lower 48 states, where you have sediments that can be used for fracking. And we will especially look at these Burnett shales here, and the Eagle Ford, some other places. And the reason is that I just have been a couple of months as a guest professor at the University of Austin in Texas, and it was just great to be close there and really be able to study the fracking on hand, so to speak. This is Texas well map. This is the number of wells that have been drilled in Texas. And we have a collaboration with the University of Texas and Uppsala University, so we have all the details of all the thousands and thousands of wells from drilling information. So we know what we can do, and we have been starting to do research on all these wells, and we're starting in Texas. If we look into the number of wells drilled in the United States, and this is the number from February 2014, we had 156,870 wells was then drilled in the United States at that time. And in Texas it was 303,909. So they knew very well how many wells it's drilled. And something like 15% of the wells in Texas is now horizontal wells that is used in fracking operations. So this is important when we should discuss about United States, about Europe. We don't have the history. We don't have the old wells. There is no tradition for drilling wells here. So we are starting with a blank sheet of paper, and this is extremely important to understand what fracking can be in Europe. Okay, as I said, we will concentrate on Texas. And I summed up all the rigs that were drilling at this time in February 2015. And you see it's a number of 740 rigs were drilling wells in Texas at that time. A rig drilled something like 10 wells per year. That is the rate, sometimes 11, sometimes 9. But that is the number of wells that each rig drills. So they have a capacity here in Texas to drill something like 7,400 wells per year. And that's, again, something that you must understand. The capacity in the United States is roughly 2,000 rigs. And that is what they have now. And the question is if they will build up a higher capacity or not. And that is also very important if you discuss the future in the U.S. And if we take Texas and Eagle Ford, that is the field that we have been very much interested in, you must have a sediment layer. And the sediment layer of Eagle Ford you have here, it reaches surface up in Dallas, and then it goes deeper and deeper. And if you remember this oil factory that I was show you was that the warmer it was, the more gas you should get. And if you now look into the upper part here, outside Dallas, you can see the layers. I've been there myself, and this is photos I've taken. So this part here, that is 90 million years old. And this part here, this part here is 80 million years old, and this part here is 90 million years old. And you see it's a quite nice border between them. But here you have kerosene, and this can be turned into oil, and this is just something about that is important also for the oil industry to understand. So if we look now what you have here, you see that in the northern part, when the sediment is not so deep, you have oil here. And then you go into condensate and gas in the south. So this I like to show, to explain for you that we understand how oil is created in ground, you know. It's very easy to understand this. And we talk about the production from this field now. There are three components. And one component is oil, and one component is in condensate. And the other component, third component, is gas. As I said, these are the three components. And the reason why we see now so much gas is produced from Eagle Ford is the fact that gas is produced at the same time as condensates and oil. If it has only been a gas field, there have been no production of gas in Eagle Ford, because they don't get back the money if you drill a gas well. And this is what you see here now when it comes to monthly dry gas, shale gas production. And we see here that Eagle Ford is coming up. And there are two explanations for that. As I said, it's because they get the gas as a surplus, something they don't really looking for, but they take care of it anyway because they are interested in condensate and oil. And the other thing is that they are trying to not flare away so much of the gas, and there are regulations now what they are allowed to burn or not to burn. If you take another field here that was mentioned earlier this morning, and that's Haynesville here, and you see that Haynesville has peaked and declined. And we got the impression this morning that this has very much to do with the fact that they are running out of gas in Haynesville. That's not the case. They are running out of money, because Haynesville is a completely dry gas field. So when they drill a well, they just get gas and nothing else. And if you drill a well in Haynesville, it costs $8 million, and you can only get back something like $5-6 million if you from the gas that you can get from the Haynesville. So that is the real reason why we have a decline in Haynesville. If the gas price is doubled or more, you will see more gas coming out from Haynesville also. And this I like to say because it's very hard to exactly get the normal way to explain the production from shale formations. Money is the driving force for any production in any shale formation, and that you must understand. So if the price is not right, there is no production. Okay, we see this, as I said, that this field is peaking and declining, and the reason that we have the Marcellus coming up so strongly, and that is because it's a field with not oil, but it has condensate. It has a lot of condensate. So you get a lot of wet gas, and the wet gas is paying for the wells, and the dry gas is something they got at the side. So this is also important to understand. Another thing is that I will come back to later is that just now the United States is producing so much condensate that they don't really know what to do with it. Okay, this is a square covering approximately 12,500 square kilometers, and you have roughly 80% of all the horizontal wells are within this region. We have been studying the decline in some of the counties here, and we also see some other details of the counties. And it's interesting to see here the population density. We say the sweet spot in Burnett is the Tarrant County, and there you see you have 809 persons per square kilometer. That's quite a dense population. And people are saying here in Europe, oh, they're drilling so much in the United States because there is no people living there. There live more people there than the regions we have in Europe they are thinking to do fracking. So they are living with fracking just around their backyards. So this is the data that we are available. Because we are collaborating with University of Texas, we have also the possibility to use the drilling info database. And this is the decline we have here in two of the counties. A little bit different, but in principle, it's the same slope here. And you see here, 48 months, that is 4 years after the production starts, you have in all the counties just less than 20% left in your well, you know. So this is the decline in the gas well. And if you look in other regions in the U.S., you see about the same decline. So it's kind of universal decline in the shale play that you lose something like 80% of the production in 4 years. So this is the region, and you see all the white spots here. That's places where you have sites for fracking. And I just took one region here. It's 5 kilometers times 5 kilometers. I mean, you can normally think a distance of 5 kilometers, and 5 kilometers, so you have that kind of area. In this area, it happens to be 178 different wells here. And it's quite a density. And you see here that people are living with all the wells, because this is a residential area with houses, you know. And this is how it looks in reality when I was up there. This is a well that is producing natural gas. When they're finished fracking and so on, it's a small thing, something that you can live with, and people are living with it. So, but the thing that really is disturbing is the top picture, and that is the compressors, because the gas that comes out from the well has not the right pressure. You must pressurize it to get into the pipeline systems. And these compressors, you know, they use normally service something. This one is servicing 4 wells. You see the 4 towers, and normally it's between 2 and 3. So if you say something like, we heard that it was 16,000 wells in production in Burnett Shale just now, and divide that with 3, and you get something like 5,000 compressor stations are in the region. And according to what I heard, the compressors was not soundless. But it can be lovely anyway when the sun sets. And this is the sunset from the Burnett, east of this lake here. So if you now look into the decline of these 2 counties, we try to find some kind of extrapolation. I mean, we are not here yet, but we had two different counties, and we take something in between. And doing that, it's possible for us to see if the decline curve that we have, if that is related to reality. And we are just now taking the number of wells drilled each year and put them in production during the year. And you see the profile that we got is the upper curve, and this is the real production of natural gas from the ship. What we haven't put into this is what's exactly when the well was fracked. And we see here in 2009, 2008, we had the cries, so they were drilling wells, but they didn't frack them. They came later on. So in principle, it's possible to explain that. So that means that the model we have now very well represents the reality when it comes to production. And the reason why we was doing this was because we like to see what is possible in Europe, and especially in Poland, when it comes to fracking. We saw this before, and I agree with David Hughes that the number you see for 2040 is not realistic. And oops, what's happened here? This is... Yep, I don't know what's happened. This is what I was going to show, the different types of oil that we have. And Mikael was showing this before, so you have seen it already. So you have the crude oil up there, and shale oil. That is the conventional oil, but it's in the open and tight formation, and you have the tar sand and so on down there. But anyway, this is the U.S. field production of crude oil, and as I showed before, it's increased dramatically. And this is what I think will happen in the future. But if you look now into the crude oil production in reality, you see it has 2 components here. It has light, tight oil, and other conventional oil, and NGLs. You see, and all this is called oil. So when they are saying that U.S. will produce as much oil as Saudi Arabia, it's not oil they're talking about. It's a hydrocarbon, light things, NGLs, and so on. And that's a problem, because the refineries in U.S. cannot take all of this. They don't know what to do with it, you know. So what they have, and as it's classified as oil, just now they are not allowed to export it. So we see now that there are politicians' movement that it should be possible again for U.S. to export oil, and that is just to get rid of the surplus of the NGLs and so on. So when you hear that someone is saying, oh, U.S. is starting to export oil, fine, no problem for the world. No, that's not the case. They're getting rid of this. And what that will mean for the future in Europe, we have to see. So, in principle, we are still at this point that our society needs oil. And how much oil do we need every day? This is what I call our daily barrel. It's 340 meter high, it's 260 meter wide, and this is the 31 billion barrels of oil that we're consuming every day. So coming back tonight and thinking about today, And when you pray your night to the evening, you should not pray for your daily bread any longer. You should pray for your daily barrel of oil. And you see the volume of that is so huge. So some of the famous buildings we have around the world will be very easy to just place them inside the barrel if you just demolish them. So now going down to Eagle Ford. As I said, I spent some time at Austin and was down there a couple of times. Up in the right corner, you see the flaring. I mean, they are burning a lot of natural gas because they don't have pipelines. They can take care of the natural gas, but they're doing that. They had now a mandatory to do that, so that's why you see an increase of natural gas production in Eagle Ford so much, because they had to take care of the gas also. You see some drilling rigs here, and down in the left corner you see what you see everywhere, and that is trucks, because there is thousands of trucks loads for every wells that are drilled, you know. So you have to be careful when you drive down there so you are not overrun by trucks. And that's another thing when this should happen in Europe, you know, that drilling 100 wells, you know, it's 100,000 of trucks that must be operating, also with water, with sand and chemical things and so on. Flaring, yes. NASA has measured the light coming out from Eagle Ford. You see it here. And the light, it can be compared with San Antonio, that is just north, or Austin or Dallas up there. So flaring is an environmental problem when it comes to fracking and it comes to shale oil. And this is the number of wells. You see the number of wells is increasing all the time. And if you look at the number of permits here, we see that in October 2013 was this, it was 6,669, and in January it was some more, so it has increased. And as I said, they had these hundreds of rigs, so it's possible for them to really do this kind of drilling, and they also need it for the future. Another thing around fracking is up in the left corner we have what is called man camps. They need a lot of people doing all the jobs, and those are normally men, guys coming from all over the United States. A kind of tough environment to be in, as I heard. I've not stayed there myself, but anyway, this is typical, say, the gold rush atmosphere and so on. People are there for some short time and then they're leaving, and what they're leaving is the boom town at that time. And there are other things. A lot of tracks standing everywhere, and it's just great to be around. I asked the police, where can I see some fracking? And he said you should take this on this road, and we did that. And of course we met all the fracking tracks and so on. And then I stopped and took some photos, and I read this. This was a lease, and it was called Jack Mickey's lease. And I looked at the internet because it happened to be that it was possible to see that how it looks when it was fracking there. You know, it happens to be that Google Earth was taking these pictures at this time. So I got very much interested in this lease here, and it happens to be that there are 5 wells that are drilled, and it also happened that this Jack Mex, he lives in this house here. And when we drove there, the truck in front of me was driving into the left up to the farm there, and I followed him up there, you know, and we made an interview with him because to get some ideas about how it is to own a lease with 5 wells like this. It's great, he said. It's great. I'm rich. I'm very rich. So let's see how it comes that he is rich and companies has problems. Well, this is a graph that says how much must the price of oil be to make it profitable. And when it comes to Eagle Ford, it says around $70 per barrel. That is what is needed to get a profitable well, or so on. We should look into that. And back in it's about the same number. So if we don't look into the detailed production profile of these 5 wells, because we have the data, and we can calculate exactly how much oil has been produced. And you see here, the sum of oil is 36 millions. And you see, the production is down here now, so it will not be so much more. And they also sold some gas. I mentioned gas was a byproduct, and they just got 2 million of that compared to the oil. But it's still, in the statistics, it's gas coming out. And the thing is that the landowner, he should have 20 to 25% of the value of the oil and gas that they take up. So he gets $8 million. That is what he gets in his pocket, and he gets a paycheck every month, you know. But the thing is that what is left over for the company is just $6 million per well. $6 million per well. And in Eagle Ford, the expenses for drilling one well is $8 million. So they have made a loss of 2 times 5, $10 million is the loss of this operation. But the landowner, of course, he is happy and smiling because he gets the money. So the fracking, say, winners are the landowners. They're getting a lot of... So they are very eager to have the companies to lease land. And the companies are leasing lands, and they are putting depth that they cannot handle. So that's one reason why the oil companies have problem, because they don't get the money back from their wells. So this is, again, the decline curve of wells in Eagle Ford. And we can see here, we have here, this is 24 months, and we are down to 15% of the production is reduced. I mean, 85% of the production is lost in 2 months just in Eagle Ford. And that is a very fast, much faster than the back end, and that has to do with the properties of oil and things like that. And you can use different ways to fit these curves, and that is done in the work that will soon be presented from Uppsala University. Another information that is quite interesting, that is what the Energy Information Administration is saying about Eagle Ford and the decline in the field. You see here that they say that production from new wells is 131,000 barrels per day. But the decline in the field is 97 barrels per day. So the real extra number in production is just 34,000 barrels per day. And if you take this month per month, it's possible to calculate what is called the next month decline. So if you look at the next month decline, if you don't drill any new wells, you have this. It looks this for Eagle Ford. It's 7.5% roughly. It was more in the beginning, but they do the operation better now. So 7.5% of the production you have at the beginning of the month is lost if you don't put new wells into it. So it's declining very fast. And if you take this number now, you can make some calculation and estimation what is possible to get in the future. And what I did here was that I increased, we drilled 210 wells per month, and we had the field decline with 7.5%, and then we get the added production per month, and added production per well, and so on. And we see that that around 1.5 million barrels per day is the maximum for Eagle Ford. And we heard this number roughly before this morning also. When it decline depends on when you stop to drill wells. And that is what we had to see when that comes. We can do the same thing with Bakken and get numbers. And this is what I got for Bakken. That is got something like 1.3 million barrels per day is the absolute maximum you probably can get from Bakken. So again, we start to get numbers now to get some ideas about the future. And that leaves United States. Dependence of import of oil, net import, you see here, is still many million barrels of oil. So U.S. will never be independent of oil, even if you read that in many articles. It's absolutely not clear. It's true. It's not true. So now let's see European perspective. We saw that the natural gas from Russia will decline, and the country that really has tried to look into this is Poland. And you see here the different shell formations in Europe. We can start with the one in Sweden, in the southern part of Sweden. Shell has been there and drilled, and they backed out because it was not profitable to get anything. They are working now in Poland, They have also made some drilling here in Ukraine, but I would not say that this shell formation is part of the conflict, because you don't really make so much money. Another thing that might be of importance was this peninsula here, because now Russia can put the pipeline up on the ground here instead of having it deep in the water to the southern pipeline for natural gas. France has said no to fracking, you see, no there. And this region here is called the Paris Basin. You have Paris in the center. And the Paris Basin is the best basin for fracking in Europe. But I don't think that people living in Paris likes to have 20,000 wells drilled in Paris. So that's one of the reasons why France are saying no to fracking. No discussion. And Poland then, yes. If you look at the base, the shell formation in Poland, it's this Baltic basin that is of interest. You have Gdansk there, and they are looking for suitable places west of Gdansk. And so far they have not found one well that has the property of the average whale from Burnett. You know, there is not one well that has that kind of production of natural gas that the average well from Burnett has. But anyway, we made the assumption that it will be possible to find these kind of wells. So this is the Polish shale dreams. Industrial trials have been clarified negative, and several companies have abandoned shale operations. I mean, they're not been successful. Despite this, the Polish government continue to talk about promising shale opportunity. It's an illusion maintained to give political power in climate negotiation and in gas price discussion. And even European Union are talking about the future of shale gas in Europe. Let's look at Poland. If we apply this west of Gdansk, the number of wells and so on, we have the following situation for Poland. You see the blue line, and that is what they produce domestically just now. You see the red line, that is the import. So we knew what the import numbers for Poland should be. And if we now start to drill with an average well from Burnett and say that is the well that will find a sign point in Poland, then we see that to get self-supported of natural gas in 4 years here, you must have this curve, and that is 500 wells per year must be drilled. 500 wells per year will be drilled. They have no rigs for the moment. And if you take a little bit longer term, you can go down to 4 here. And of course, it's important how much you get per well. So if you take 400 wells with a solid line, what is called the average well. If it's more, you reach the number earlier. If it's less, you will never come up to that number. So taking a time frame of something like, you see here, you have 3,000 wells in what's that? It's 7 years, something like that. In 20 years, you have thousands of wells drilled in Poland, and each of these wells cost at least $8 million per well. It may be even more expensive here in Europe. The other thing is, to drill 400 wells per year, you must have 40 rigs or more. You don't have them. And who is willing to make the investment to get up to get the wells, the rigs here? So probably you need to import rigs from the United States to be able to have any kind of shale history here in Europe. So again, if you now look at the global situation when it comes to oil supply, we know, as we heard before, that the crude oil in the existing field are declining. They think that it's possible to get out a certain amount of crude oil from field that has not yet been developed. And then, of course, we had the crude oil to be found. And again, as we heard, it's an enormous amount of oil that should be found, and I don't believe in that. And then we have the large tight oil. I mean, that is the fracking. So this fracking is important. I mean, it's a couple of percentage of the global production, but not more. But the thing is, the yellow part, the NGL, that is produced now in larger and larger quantities. And what will that will mean for the future when it comes to supply of oil. We have one big problem in Europe that you might not know about, and that is a diesel problem. There is not enough diesel produced in Europe. We don't know what to do about it. Just for the moment, we are importing diesel from China because they have a spare capacity when it comes to diesel. So if any one of you bought a diesel car just recently, sorry. Because the fuel will not be available in the future. And it was mentioned that I made this report to OECD about the problem in the future, and you see it in this graph. If we now consider that the global oil production will stay constant, I mean, it might decline, but let's say it stay constant, then we have the fact that the nations that are producing oil, they are consuming more and more oil each year. Take, for instance, Saudi Arabia. This is consuming something like 2 million barrels of oil per day just now. And also we have China and India, and we see an increase of use of oil here. So in between we have the OECD countries that are squeezed. So here, in 2005, that was the lucky year for us here, because that was the year when we had the maximum amount of oil to import for the OECD countries. We will never, ever come back to that again. And we know that oil has to do with the economy, so we will never, ever come back to that economy again, as we had in 2005. And you see here in 2020, that is 5 years from now, the amount of oil available for us compared to what we had 15 years ago is half of that. And that will affect Europe enormous. We have an economic crisis in Europe. You have it on the screen behind you, explanation of it. So, global flows of oil. From the Middle East, yes, Middle East is the center still. There are 6 countries we call the GCC countries. That is Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, and the Emirates. These 6 countries are the remaining kingdoms down on the peninsula, there. And they are, of course, not democratic countries. These 6 countries, can you guess how much of the remaining conventional oil they have in their reserves? 40% of all the world's remaining conventional oil are in these countries. For the moment, they are producing 25% of all the oil in the world, these countries. It's a lot of money flowing in their directions, of course. But if something happened now with the crisis, with ISIS and so on in the Middle East, they like to overturn the king of Saud and so on. If these kind of things happen, I don't know what will happen with the world economy at that point. So it's interesting to see that even the world, the EMF are now discussing the future. And this is Christian Larger said that talk about the mega shaping our future, increasing vulnerability from resource scarcity and climate change with the potential for major social and economic disruption. So they understand now that the resource scarcity is a problem for the global future. And we just heard the other day that they are now writing down the growth of the global economy now. And this is what we saw before, the correlation, how oil and the increase in GDP was coupled to each other, except for the house bubble in 2007 and so on. And if you look into the exponential growth, I started that. And we see here from 1950 up to 70, we had an exponential growth of 8% per year. And of course it must come an oil crisis at that point, because the society at that point was not ready for something else. The industry didn't manage to increase the production anymore. And then you see in the 80s they started on a new increase with an increase of 1.5% per year. And we managed to get some kind of economic growth with that. But in 2005, we entered into what I call a bumpy road. And we have a bumpy road ahead, and that will be characterized for our future. And we will see what's happened in the future. But if we now look into what they are saying at IMF, they have started to look into peak oil now and see what does it mean in reality for GDP. And you see, without peak oil. So it's a big, dramatic change in the global economy that Peak Oil is discussed in connection with that. So, going back in history and see when the oil age started. It started on January the 10th, 1901, when the Lucius Gusher in Spindletop in Texas was discovered. It was an enormous field at that time, enormous production. I mean, they had 100,000 barrels per day was just streaming up in the air, you know. In April 1901, Spindletop produced more than the rest of the world. I mean, more than 50% of all the oil in the world was produced at this spot. And they didn't know what to do really with it. So that was the start of the oil boom, cars and everything, you know, oil for everything. And today it looks like this. There is a flag pole showing where the first well was discovered, and there is a rusty pump producing some oil that you can buy as a souvenir, you know. $3 per bottle. Very expensive oil. So if we go back here again to Texas, we had talked about Eagle Ford when it comes to oil. No, very little oil here, but this is the Permian Basin. And Permian Basin is just the start when it comes to shale oil. And you will see that in the coming year, Permian Basin will take over to be the number one producer of shale oil in the United States. Because the shale formations are very thick. They are stacked on top of each other so they can make new technology available there. And I've been out there and discussed with people, so they think that in 5 years they will overrun Eagle Ford and so on. So I used to say that the oil age started in Texas as Spindletop and will fade away with the last well being drilled fracked in the Permian Basin. That's the oil age history. And in between, we had to fight for many things. And the thing is that time is running out. Time is running out. And we're using oil for all of these things you see down there. And we know that we are emptying the bottle of oil. So what's happened? Well, I used to end with this little thinking. If we take all the oil fields in Iraq, it's roughly 100,000 barrels of oil in these oil fields. And we pour them into a bottle of champagne. I should, of course, chosen a Spanish brand now when I'm here, but sorry for that. Anyway, so that's one bottle of champagne. And who knows, we might get some champagne tonight or drink that, and we know how to drink it, you know. And we know now that we have consumed 11 bottles of champagne. That's how much oil we have consumed so far. And if you're thirsty, you must know where to find what we have in your refrigerator. And for the moment, we are discussing if it's 8 or 9 bottles. I think 9 is probably the right number. And where can we find them? Well, one in America, one in Russia and so on, one in Asia, one in Africa, and 5 in the Middle East. That is where we can find the remaining champagne bottles. So if we open up this bottle, and that is, and we drink our yearly share of it, and that is 30 billion barrels, we see that one bottle is equal to 3 years and a couple of months consumption of champagne. So all the oil in Iraq can support the world, not for 4 years even. It's 3 years and something. And US, their conventional oil, yes, they have run out of that, and for that they are sipping the last glass. But they have now this fracking oil also that should be added. And if we look now into what is possible to find, we have that conventional oil, probably is another 2 bottles will be possible to find. And then, of course, we have the non-conventional oil, the sparkling wine in Canada and Venezuela. And then we have the shale oil, another bottle in US, you know. So, dear friends, this is a problem. You have to sober up. You are not allowed to drink so much champagne in the future, but not tonight, I think. Thank you. And, oops. Of course, I must mention at the end that I've written this book, Peaking at Peak Oil. And I was very proud when I read in World Oil that I said that this book should be required reading for anyone seriously interested in the future world economy, energy market and the economy, especially politicians and policymakers. So if you have not read it, Please read it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kjell. I say Kjell, right? Not Shell. Okay. Yeah. Time for questions. Jesús. Un momento. Eso es.
I hope you put questions in English.
I try to say you in English. If not, I say in Spanish and he translate. And you have made an example from the Poland.
Yes.
And I want to ask you, what is the initial production that you have calculated in the medium from the wells, for each well? In your example, 3,000 meter cube.
I must look at it's the average production from Burnett shales. So it's the same as the average well production in Burnett shales. I don't have the number exactly. I don't remember the exact number, but you can get it from me.
Más.
Well, it's after lunch. It's very hard to give a lecture because people are kind of sleepy. But
yeah, after lunch. Yeah, I know.
I guess they can look at this later on if they like to rehearse what I see once again. Or will you put it available on the internet?
Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much, Professor Aleklett, or Shell.
Shell is right. Yes.
Thank you. So Peak Oil is interdisciplinary. It combines natural sciences with social sciences, such as economics.
Yes.
And I teach high school, so I'm always trying to take information from experts like you and explain it to high school students. And one of the things we talk about is that a good theory in natural sciences or in social sciences should be falsifiable. So when my students come to me and they say, look, at this article, it says that the U.S. is going to be the new Saudi Arabia, or the peak oilers said we were going to peak in 2005, 2006. Mr. Kelly, it's not falsifiable. These theories you're trying to bring into the curriculum, they're not robust, and I think they are robust. But what would you say are some falsifiable hypotheses regarding peak oil today?
Well. When it all started in 1998, when Colin Campbell and Jean Lerre wrote this article, it was called the peak of the conventional oil. They were discussing conventional oil, and they said in their article that the conventional oil should peak around 2004, 2005, and they were right. And at that time, the unconventional things was not thought about at the same time. When we made our estimation in 2002, and Colin Campbell and I published we also took into account unconventional and so on. And we had a peak in the global oil production in 2013 with 85 million barrels per day, and that was exactly what it turned out to be. All other forecasts before that was much, much higher. Of course, we didn't take into account the fracking because no one thought it was possible. And again, this is unconventional. Of course, one should say that this is important, but we know now, since they've been fracking for some years, what the future probably will be. There is some uncertainties yet, but I can say that there will never be 10 million barrels per day fracking oil from the United States, and there will probably not be even 6 million barrels, but there will be 3, 4, and so on. But again, as Mikael Höök was telling us before, the decline in the existing oil field that is producing is so dramatic. So even all the shale oil from the US will not replace 1 year's decline in conventional oil. Again, it's not easy to say it in one term, but you must have the knowledge to explain it for them.
Yeah, they will translate to Spanish for the rest. Yeah.
I think you made a good point there. It started to that that the shale oil really is not producing diesel. And, even if you got all of the shale oil going in Europe, it still wouldn't produce the diesel that the cars and trucks in Europe need. So, this is a real big issue, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the diesel issue is so dramatic. Just 2 days ago, I was on a conference in Sweden that were just discussing what's happened with our society without diesel, and it's dramatic things happen, 1 week without diesel, and no one in Europe will get any food at all, for instance. Except the farmers that has them in the farmer. But I mean, in cities and so on. Another thing I'd like to discuss now, maybe mention, is you see that the price of oil is going down just for the moment. And if you look into some of the details, you see that Saudi Arabia is selling their oil a little bit cheaper just now. And I think that they don't like the competition with shale oil. So if they just get down the oil to $80 per barrel, they can manage with that price because they can still have the society to function. U.S. shale oil cannot function with $80 per barrel; it will die completely. So this is kind of a market competition we probably see just now.
A couple of the speakers this morning, including yourself, have kind of pointed toward just the bad business it is. It just doesn't seem to be a good business from a large business standpoint. Maybe the landowner apart, and so a little bit building on a question that Antonio Turiel put to the other speaker this morning. I guess this would be logical. I couldn't begin to understand why they would stay in this business, the bigger companies, on the long term. So do you see, and what do you think the risk is that abandonment will accelerate, and then, the repercussions that would be that? Because we're always looking out at 2030 and things like that. I can't imagine anybody's going to stay in this business for much.
They are moving out now. You see it. You can just read all the small articles, and you see they're moving out. And big companies like, you may not think about it, but the Norwegian company Statoil, they went into fracking and they will probably pull out very soon. And their cash flow just now is dramatically low. And what will happen there, we don't know. I mean, and there is other companies that has big problems. And ExxonMobil is probably one that is the best company for the moment that have the right cash flow and so, but they have not been in there so long, But some of the other companies that are doing profits there, they have control of the whole chain. They are drilling, they are fracking, and they are producing. So if they don't make money on the oil, they make money on the fracking and the drilling. So those companies will survive, not because of the price of oil, but because of that they get profits from the other parts of the fracking.
Thanks, Professor. Do you have some environmental data about, your connection in the U.S.?
I've heard some seminars about it, and there are mixed things. I mean, some regions they're saying that you can see the environmental effects of it. Some others are saying you don't see it. I mean, we should always remember, if you take, for instance, Haynesville, the wells are very, very deep. I think they are 8,000 feet down. So it's that something should happen from the fracks. There is Burnett is not so deep. So the depth of the formation is very important also when it comes to today. I think that the ceilings in the drillings and so on is very good. I mean, I think they know what to do with that. But of course, I saw that. An ad from Schlumberger about fracking fluids, and they say that we are not pumping down in the ground anything else than you can buy in your grocery store. I mean, but I mean, you can buy very nasty things in your grocery store. So.
Le decía a David que muchas gracias porque vemos que encima de la mesa ya hay un gesto que se ha convertido en una acción. ¿Perdona?
Iba a hablar yo de ello, ¿no?
Vale. Quería preguntarle, ha hablado de sus alumnos y, bueno, algunos de nosotros estamos viviendo ya en Sion y sí que me gustaría, si puede comentarnos, sus alumnos, imagino que es gente joven, cómo están viviendo la problemática que tienen tan cerca, cómo están sintiendo que el medio ambiente que les rodea, el agua que les da de beber, pueda estar tan amenazada, qué movimientos sociales se han llevado a cabo, si es que se han llevado a cabo, o si la densidad de población es demasiado baja y por eso también se han atrevido a entrar tan directamente. ¿Y qué soluciones se están poniendo para todo lo que llega después? Gracias.
Thank you for the question. When it comes to water in Sweden, we don't have the kind of problems that we have in the southern part of Europe. I mean, I think that there is no community in Sweden that has bad water, for instance. I mean, it's just tap it and drink it and be happy, you know. And that is what students are doing when it comes to water. And environment, yeah, I mean, there are I guess, in other parts of the world, some students that are very engaged in the issue, and some that is not so much. But we have a curricula at Uppsala University called Energy Systems, and most of the students that I've been dealing with studying the energy issues and so on. And I used to tell them that this change you see now is an opportunity for you to do something, to find new business and so on. If you are aware about the problems, you can also work with them, you know. And I think that they more start to think about what can I do now to make it better, you know. So it's they see a mission in the future job instead of being worried about it, I think, you know. And of course that's very, very good. And again, the thing I used to say to students is that, what should we do? They say, what should we do? I say, well, honestly, think of yourself first. Change your life and do what you think is best. And make sure that you have a good life. I mean, it's the same as if you fly in an airplane and say, you should take the oxygen yourself first and then help your children, you know. And then if you do this, other people start to ask, why are you doing this? You know, why should I not do the same thing? And I think the personal agenda, change your life yourself. I think that is the most important thing for the young generation to understand. And should I have a driver's license or not? Well, how should I think about the future? You know?
I think something for Kjell's presentation. Thank you again for your contribution.